Okay, next up is Kelley Balcomb-Bartok. Kelley spent his summers immersed in whale research, so intimately familiar with the southern residents. Kelley's experience with whales led him to a career in the field of communications, where he helped foster a greater appreciation and understanding of the beauty of the San Juan Islands. Kelley is an artist and a professional photographer who uses these mediums to share the beauty of the whales in the Pacific Northwest.
Thank you, John. All right. But it's not about me tonight. I'm going to shut that. All right. If everything goes well, there he is. Kenneth Chester Balcomb III. Kenneth Chester Balcomb III, born November 11th, 1940. Passed away at 3:30 in the morning on December 15th, 2022. On the Elwha River, with that as the view, the beauty of the glass, right through his glass sliding door, were the mountains above and the river down the side, and Howie and Susan and I by his side. I have a tissue box, just in case. That's Kenny at the bottom. My grandfather, so this is going to be more of a personal story. Pictures probably no one has seen, so the question of tell us something about Ken, it's going to be in here. These are family photos from the family albums, and I'm curating kind of the collection of all those photos. There's thousands and thousands of images. It's going to take me a long time to get through it, but I thought I'd share sort of an arc of Ken's life that I've known all my life. And so that's Kenny at the bottom. His my grandfather, his father, is the one on the upper right, Kenneth Chester Balcomb II. And of course, Kenneth Chester Balcomb I is just to his upper left shoulder there. And the rest of the family, Doug, Irv, Sam, and Mama. So Howie approved that I could bring a few baby photos out because he's in them. That's Howie, the little one on the right. Kenny in the middle. Ricky. Ricky passed in '84 in Berkeley, for those that don't know, Berkeley. And again here, I mean, can you see Howie in that? But that's Dad and Ricky and Howie. So tonight, as I said, this is a little more personal of just a slideshow and some images of his life. So Dad's story ends with fish, and Dad's first salmon was 1952. Howdy Doody becomes this really good-looking young man, and this good-looking young man meets a woman, and my mother, Ann Bartok, Ann Balcomb at the time, Blomquist maiden name. And a little boy is born, and they're in a tiny little place in Dixon, California. Davis, actually, right near Dixon, sorry. And his interest at the time, he's in the UC Davis system, and he's going to college, and he's not quite sure what he's going to do with his life. His father is a lawyer, and his other interests might be in zoology or veterinary medicine, or not quite sure. And an opportunity arises for him in Richmond, California. So I'm not that old, I'm 60, and so I was born in 62. In the 1965, Dad had an opportunity in Richmond, California. Whaling was still allowed and was still very much an active part of the area. So his life changed for probably, it affected the rest of his life. He had an opportunity to sign aboard the Lin Ann as a dishwasher and quickly moved up from dishwasher into spotter. And so this is a unique opportunity. And the significance of these photos is that I wanted to share the significance. That's Dad on the far right, if you didn't notice. The significance is that whaling was actually still very much a part of our culture, and it goes all the way back to the beginning of America, is that oil lamps lighting the streets of Boston and the East Coast, baleen in the corsets and things for women's clothing. The original petroleum are whales. And so at that time, for a young budding marine mammal biologist and interest in the animal kingdom, this is a very unique opportunity for a young man. And a noted person I wanted to point out in the middle, three from the right, is a very significant man, Dr. Dale Rice. And Dale Rice is significant in Dad's life because he introduced him into this experience and this opportunity. And then we'll come back later in life, and I'll explain that when we get to it. So imagine the Golden Gate Bridge, and you're heading out on the Lin Ann, and you're heading out to the outer coasts. And what are you seeing? That's Dad there. you're seeing whales. And so here again is this unique opportunity for a man to start to see the whale world at a time when whales weren't really understood. So some of these photographs were very much some of the first photographs taken of live animals, and National Geographic picked up a few at the time. And so this goes way back. Now, whaling isn't always a popular topic, and so I'm only briefly sharing it because of the significance in Dad's life. Was that very much it really struck his curiosity, and so here is an opportunity, again, a dark era, but an opportunity for a young man to be able to learn about of these mammals. And so I share that only for the significance of that. Otherwise, I should have given maybe a graphic warning. But Dr. Dale Rice again. The reason Dr. Dale Rice is so significant is that in a few more years after this, Orca Survey will begin in 1976, and it will be Dr. Dale Rice that will ask Ken Balcomb to be the photographer and the founder of Orca Survey. So this is, oops, a slide vanished from this one, but we'll just move forward. Oh, okay, so that era. So that era ends, and his curiosity for the natural world continues. And so for a period of time, he actually went bird banding when there was, again, these study opportunities. And so that's where he first was out on Midway Island. And so as a young boy, I got to experience Midway Island for the first time. And it was a magical place. And I had to sneak a slide in that has Wizzarella, one of the most amazing dogs in our memory. So dogs play a very significant role in our life as well, as some know. And then as a young man, he remarries Julie and he becomes a pilot. And this is significant for the next step in his life because while serving in the United States Navy, he has the opportunity to be flying, but also he has the opportunity to be flying in the old submarine search planes. And so he's listening to the undersea world for submarines. And what do you think he hears? Whales. And so the curiosity is now firm in his mind as here's this opportunity for this young man to basically sneak that in on you. Here's this opportunity for this young man to experience whales for the first hand. So yeah, I mean, his facial hair thing is going to change on you, you know. But again, this is why I'm doing this. This is fun. We're going to unveil the mysteries behind this man in some ways, and I think Dad would approve. Back in the Navy years, of course, you have to have the, forgive me, but you have to have the pretty blonde and you have to have the fast car. And so this was his fast car. Unfortunately, he sold it when he needed the money for $5,000. It's now worth $1.5 million. Dad's sense of humor will continue on. I have it how he has it. My son and daughter in the room, they probably have it too. But off he goes on adventures. And so these are significant images because this is really when the man starts to become, you know, the whale researcher. And his first whales are Baja, California, with a good friend of his, Rick Chandler, who is going to play a significant role later in the beginnings of Orca Survey. And so Chandler and Ken Balcomb are in the Baja area, and they're studying both the whales, the gray whales in the lagoons, but also the whales that are washing up. And for those that have ever been out to the center and Dad's property, whale bones have been in my house, in our home, in our lives all my life, because that was also another thing that he was loved having, is his collection of bones. But his understanding of whales was growing leaps and bounds during this experience and this time. And so it's a natural progression for him as he's going through life, and his fascination and his travel. So this is in Iceland, actually. And so here, at that time, he does a second stint in the United States Navy. And this shot is where the bearded man there, second from the right, is Ken, if you didn't notice. And the reason he's actually back in the Navy and what he's doing is, at the time, it was top secret. It's called SOSUS. It was a sound system that was basically tracking military submarines in Russia and China, primarily Russia, and that's why Japan, because from the point of Japan, he could listen to the ports and the harbors in Russia and actually hear the submarines as they left the port, recognizing each individual one. And he was training the Japanese, so he's a little bit of an incognito as the bearded fellow, looking rather harmless. And so that's what he was doing, was teaching them how to use the systems, and again, listening to the whales. One story I will tell, and I know it's gruesome, and Katie has this photo in the ooh, and that is that the skull is actually in the ooh too. This is a transient skull from Japan, and he's in a cab, and he's driving by a Japanese cab, and he sees this on the side of the road, and of course he's trying to tell the Japanese driver, please stop, and the Japanese driver, no, yes, we'll continue, and so he jumps out of a moving vehicle and actually talks his way into buying this skull, fully fleshed, and then buys it, and then talks the driver into putting it into his trunk. So it's cabbed to his to the base, and where he's living, he buries it. Which of course cleans it, flences it, buries it, and it is clean. And the United States Navy back then would allow you to sell or ship things home as furniture. So you got a really nice couch. So that came home as a couch. Yeah. And that's a photo I took actually when I was in Japan with Dad and Camille. So Camille Goebel is his third wife, and she plays a role in the early part of Orca Survey. But this was, again, as a boy, I'm having a chance to visit Dad in the summer months wherever Dad was. And so Midway Island one summer, Japan another. And then so Orca Survey. So Dale Rice asks Ken to begin Orca Survey in 1976. And so April 1st, they began the very first photo ID study in Washington, based on the, of course, study, and I know I'm talking to those that know, but based on the first study founded by Dr. Michael Bigg in 1973. So this is Camille, and the whole idea was call this number if you saw whales, and so here begins the very first census. And Dad at this time is no longer in the Navy, but he has begun the study that Dale Rice asked him to, but he still loved to fly. So that's the original Boston whaler that Dad's always been we're a Boston whaler family, we're a Nikon family, and and that was the original Uniflight for the very first year. So this is one of the very first J-Pod family photos taken, and some of the significant whales of the time. And of course, it's on the cover of the original Orca Survey Guide produced in 1978. Moclip Cetological Society, by the way, was the nonprofit at the time that he founded. And interesting enough, we were based out of Winslow and Bainbridge Island, and so our first summer of study was coming out of Winslow, and then we'd find whales there occasionally, but we'd find more often than not the whales on the west side of San Juan Island. That's Hannah Heights in 1976, so I want to compare that to now and see the difference. So anyway, the study then puts us up in the islands in 77 full-time, and then in 78 we found the house was available and we rented it. So these are early shots of that time. A significant thing that changes, and I think this is a huge mark in the sand, is that this is the end of a capture era, and this study begins because of the capture era. How many whales are there? They've taken 50. How many can they sustain? And so this is the very last capture that was took place in southern Puget Sound. This is 04 and 05 that were then removed from that area. And because the state of Washington, Ralph Monroe, Dan Evans, Slade Gorton said no more. And so in April, they actually brought these animals up to Kanaka Bay on San Juan Island. Well, here we are. And brought them to Kanaka Bay to set and release. And this is at the very same, almost within just weeks of each other, of the beginning of this future of study of photo identification of animals and the end of an era and the capture period that was happening. That's Brad Hansen right there in the very sexy orange cap, right? And 04 and 05 in Kanaka Bay. Interestingly enough, the bay itself, Kanaka Bay, those giant steel eye bolts that held the nets, and I didn't include this in this one, but the eye bolts are still there. And when we were filming Free Willy 2 in Kanaka Bay for the kissing scenes and the riding on the back of the whale scenes, it was interesting because those eye bolts were there, and I was showing the producers and directors and actors and everybody. And here was this really crazy, another juxtaposition 18 years more. And that's when now you have these animatronic whales in the very same bay where once upon a time there were live whales held. And so that's a whole nother kind of really funny juxtaposition in life. And these are the tags that were put on those animals. These are all photographed at the time by Ken. And Ken and Camille were very much interested in both that captive element, but also back to the photo ID work. And this is encounter number 6 where I met the whales for the very first time. That's me in my 49ers cap, for those that are Seahawks fans. Sorry about that. Forgive me. Danny McSweeney, Rick Chandler in the Whaler, and these are, again, this is all very local area photographs from the early days. One of the second most famous photos of Dad's was this one of L13. This was also Dad's favorite whale. He had a very unique relationship. And then this one is still today the most iconic image that's ever been captured, in my opinion, of the killer whales. That's J2 in Harrow Strait. And Howie mentioned earlier that he also then had 2 lives. And so at one point he's doing the Orca survey, and he's also over on the East Coast out of Gloucester, Massachusetts, and Regina Maris, and traveling and following the migratory routes of the humpback whales into Greenland and Iceland and in the northern climes for their feeding, and then into the southern climes at Dominican Republic and Silver Bank. And that is in thanks to George Nichols, Dr. George Nichols, who owned Regina at the time, and he and Ken became tight. Ken was the research director for the Ocean Research and Education Society, and Regina Maris was the magical vessel that got him there. And for those of us that had the opportunity, it was magical. So Dad was always a teacher, as Howie mentioned. He loved to share his knowledge and information as he learned and became quite the expert. He loved to share that with others. And boy, he could walk into a room. True story. He'd walk into a whale museum and somebody brought in a skull or something that, what is this? And he walked by and goes, "Oh, that's a Lagonarhynchus obliquidens," and continues walking like casually as heck. It wasn't that. Obviously, we don't have one of those around here. But the point is, he would just whip it out and could just tell you what it was. Always a learner. Always a teacher, and always a researcher. And so these are all, many of that is the Regina era, but it really, I think, is an indication of Dad's passion for the animals through his whole life. I picked up on that, and obviously many others have followed and love his passion for the whales. And his favorite place in the world often was at the very bow of the Regina Maris there with, this beautiful time machine ship behind him and the horizon and the whales in front. So back on the islands, there's also, that was the 1979. He is the founder of the Whale Museum. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a nasty divorce on that, but that was still something that he was passionate about. And that is L8. L8 washes up on his beach, of all places, at the Smuggler's Cove property. And so they put that back together and hung that in the museum. And so always about the bones, the collections. And then in 1980, he started the whale school and was teacher to a new program there. And the house, the center, the property, the Smuggler's Cove, the beach is a significant place in all of our, I think of at the time it was the epicenter of the universe for the killer whale research and very significant. It's a little quiet out there now, and I will say I don't want to be sad, but it is sad to be out there on a beautiful view and not have those Southerns out there playing day in and day out like they used to. And then, of course, Prentice Blodell was his partner at the time, of another man in his life that played a very significant role in the early years of the research. And Noctilio at the time, it was renamed High Spirits later because then Prentice went on to make a new trimaran and named it Noctilio, which is a bat. And Prentice was both into killer whales and also into bats. And so that was a significant element. And this boat was a favored boat by the whales because it was so unique. It was slow, 6 or 8 knots. But it was so unique. It was a wide platform for our Earthwatch programs, and the whales just loved it. They could come right up between the amas and swim by and look at people. And so it was magical, and that boat played a really significant role in it. I think this is my cue. Yeah, here it comes. I'm gonna do something here for you because this is just Ken's smile photos, and I'm gonna do that. Sorry. Okay. So his final interview occurred on, well, not final, his second to last, because we will be sharing with you his last in a video that will follow momentarily. But in his second to last interview, it was here at the house in Smuggler's Cove in August of last year. And this was a chance for Ken to one last time really share his passion and love on camera. And it was a special opportunity for us to be able to work with him and capture that. And yeah, that was a moment. So we're almost done. I just wanted to put a little plug in here for all of the people that have come before, and there are so many that were part of the early years of Orca Survey and prior, and there's names here of so many wonderful people that were participants in this, and I remember and love each one of them. And of course, there's the Suchi and Mako, which there are whales named after. For those that don't know that, the reason they are named is because we had a dog named Suchi, and she climbed trees, a golden retriever, and we had a dog named Mako. And anyway, this is a special place. This photo right here that I'm showing you is Exuma, Bahamas, and it's Little Spirit Cay. And this is where 1/3 of my father's ashes have been spread in one of his most favorite places in the world. Anyway, I love you, Dad, and that's my tribute to my father, and thank you for taking the time to share this with me.